webinar series. I'm Tish Burrell, or Letitia Burrell, and I am one of the board members and happy to be here with you this morning. And I have the awesome pleasure of introducing Tamara Farabee. Tamara is a current director with executive director and founder of the Healing Trees Incorporated. Additionally, she is a licensed professional counselor who has been practicing for over 25 years and is a member of the National Association of Black Counselors. She dedicates herself fully to counseling and causes that make a difference and faith-based organizations. She has worked as an advocate to address suicide, trauma, and grief. Besides counseling, her passions are teaching, training, and consulting. Additionally, she serves as a clinical supervisor and mentor to many. Tamara is currently pursuing her doctorate of education in human services administration at Nova Southeastern University and is currently a doctoral candidate. So without further ado, we welcome Ms. Farabee to start today's presentation.
Good morning.
And I was just going to add that it will be a very interactive session. So please put your questions in the chat, raise your hands, and enjoy the session.
Good morning. As Tish introduced me, I am glad to be here with you. Again, my name is Tamara Farabee, and I'm the Executive Director of the Healing Trees and also of the National Association of Black Counselors, and happen to be founder of both of those. So I'm thrilled to be with you. Thrilled she told me about your series and talking about neurodivergence, which I think is awesome. I think it's great that you guys are doing that, and recognizing the differences in people and basically how we can work together to recognize those differences, embrace those differences, and learn how to use those differences to improve our processes and improve working with one another every day. It truly takes all types, as my grandmother said. So when she approached me, she talked about wanting to talk about positivity. And, you know, I thought about it, I framed everything, and I told her, I said, you know, the only way that I know to talk about being positive nowadays is really to talk about something called resilience. And so that's why I named this Positively Resilient, okay? So what is resilience? A lot of people are like, well, what do you mean? And of course, I'm coming from a behavioral health practitioner point of view. So I'm gonna give you kind of that standard of resilience. So the American Psychological Association says resilience is the process and outcome of successfully adapting to difficult or challenging life experiences, especially through mental, emotional, and behavioral flexibility and adjustment to external and internal demands. That means that you can flex and adjust to all of the life's challenges that you have. Now, this is not necessarily one size fits all, as you guys know with neurodivergence. There are a lot of things that come into play to make resilience work. It's a result of a complex series of internal and external things that happen in your environment. It has to do with your genetics, your physical fitness, your mental health, and the environment that you're in as well. So to be resilient, it's a combination of those things. And you guys know that that's the extreme complexity. So I said, after COVID, and I guess I need a show of hands, and I guess you guys are going to need to tell me the show of hands. How many of you guys kind of feel like the world is falling apart and people are like more stressed than ever before, like that you remember in your lifetime? I see one raised hand. Anybody else? See 4. So how many of you guys feel like things are the way they used to be before that? After COVID is no different than before COVID.
And Tamara, in the chat, we have not falling apart, but people seem more conscious to their mental state.
Oh, okay. So you feel like people are more honed into their mental state.
That's a comment from.
That's what I'm saying. That was in the chat.
Mhm.
Okay. And maybe you're right. I think maybe we did start paying more attention to our mental state during COVID. One of the things that I know that I work with my clients is, and that has to do with resilience, is the level of stress that you're under and the level of stress that you're feeling. And that awareness, as somebody said, is very important for you to even be able to gauge how resilient you are and how you're doing. So one of the things that I did, I put something in the chat for you all, which is a scale that I want you guys to look at. So with all of our changes, everything we have going on, I want you to figure out, how stressed are you? And, how can we remain positive despite all the challenges and the stress that we have in life? So the first thing I want you to do is gauge, how stressed are you? We've had COVID-19, we constantly have mass shootings, we have political unrest, we've got violence, we've got inflation, we've got pending layoffs, they're talking about a recession. How are you going to be positive when stressed and overwhelmed? I know for me, the last few months has been particularly stressful. I have a mother who's almost 80 who took a serious health turn. That's extremely stressful. And so how can you be positive when you're very stressed and overwhelmed? How many of us this year alone, especially during COVID, I think we all felt stressed and overwhelmed. But now that the COVID time period is now kind of sort of over, the crisis is over. How many of you think that people are still just as stressed? By raising hands. Okay, so a few of you raised your hands, like 3 raised your hands to say that. And so people ask me, a lot of people ask me, how can I be positive when I'm stressed, I'm overwhelmed, things in the grocery store have, some of them doubled and tripled in cost, the money is less, the packages are smaller, the kids are out of hand, you don't feel necessarily safe anywhere. How am I going to be positive during this time? How in the world can that even happen? And my answer again is resilience. I see somebody put something in the chat.
Okay, David Sams added a comment earlier. I feel in some ways people do not even yet understand the underlying mental health issues that came about due to the pandemic. And 2 folks on a scale of 1 to 10 put, I feel like a 7.
Okay. They're like, I'm at a 7, right? Okay, so this is the stress inventory. This is the Holmes Ray stress inventory. So this is like an actual formalized stress inventory, and it lists some of the most stressful things that can come about for a person, and it gives point percentages for each thing, like points, the number of points that you can earn. So what I want you to do is take a minute, go to the link that I sent you, which is the stress inventory, and it'll say take assessment, and you hit the little button, and it'll take you to the inventory. So I just kind of want you to kind of informally write it down on a piece of paper, or add up your little points, and come up with your stress score. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. So start raising your hands and kind of let me know when you're done. That way I'll know how many of you pretty much have completed. And can I reshare the link? Yes, there it is. Are all of you able to get to it? Okay. Does anybody need me to hold off for a minute before I move on? Like, let me know if I do need to hold off. Okay, so I'm gonna keep going. Oops, wrong way. Okay, so what does your score mean? All right, so, okay, where's my, oh, there we go. Okay, so 150 points or less, relatively low amount of life change, and a low susceptibility to stress-induced health breakdown. One of the things that we know is that stress can lead to health breakdown, physical health breakdown, mental health breakdown. So that takes away from our resilience, the amount of stress that we're experiencing. And so we're going to have to learn ways to manage that. So very few of us are probably at 150 points or less. So the next one, 150 to 300 points, 50% chance of health breakdown in the next 2 years. 300 points or more, 80% chance of health breakdown in the next 2 years, according to their statistical prediction model. So those of us with high numbers, we got a lot going on. We had too much going on. Okay. So anybody got any questions about that before I go any further? Higher than I thought it would be. I see you guys in the chat. Yeah. And these types of things are not meant to alarm, but rather to make you aware. Like someone said, I need to go back. Okay. Do you see the range to the slides?
Yes.
Okay. So, well, someone was asking me to go back to it. So I just want to make sure that you guys had it. Okay. So positivity equals resilience and the ability to move in productive and healthy ways. I put the healthy in there because I think a lot of us are moving, but not necessarily in a healthy way. So I think that that's what we're seeing in society. To really put this in simplistic terms, I think people are at a higher level of stress than we've been in a long time. And people are moving and they're reacting to the stress, but it's not necessarily in a productive or a healthy way. So that is what we're seeing. That is the whirlwind effect that I think we're starting to see in terms of people responding. I think responding to the post, the post response to COVID, the aftermath, the everything that came with it and still comes with it. And now I guess the results of everything from, like I said, to political unrest, to inflation, to on and on and on and on. So the ability to continue to move in healthy ways. So I want you to understand more from a scientific point of view too, about what resilience is. So this is a short film that I found that explains it well. It talks about it from the point of childhood. But what I want you to understand, and you'll see later, because I got another video for you, short video. These are about 4 minutes, is resilience is important It's important from childhood through the lifespan. And so this will explain the beginning of it from childhood onward, and then we'll have further discussion about it. But I want you to watch this and get a full understanding, and then we'll talk about it some.
Resilience is the result of a highly interactive process between individual characteristics in the person and the environment in which that individual has developed.
It's really the counterbalancing of difficult things that may exist in the child's life with positive things that occur within the family, but even positive things that may exist in the community.
The easy way of thinking about resilience is like a scale with a fulcrum in the middle of it. And there are things on both sides of that scale, experiences of both bad things or good things.
Our genes shape where the fulcrum is positioned at the start.
There are certain genes that make a child more sensitive to the effects of maltreatment or parental neglect or witnessing violence.
The fulcrum may start out kind of more towards one side or more towards the other side, and that's going to make a big difference in terms of how much these subsequent events affect things positively or negatively.
Science tells us that experience moves the fulcrum, for better or for worse.
Even though we are born with genes, genes will respond differently to certain environmental situations as opposed to others.
What the genes are actually doing are turning up or turning down the expression of chemicals in circuits in the brain and the circuitry in the entire body that govern our responses to stress, to anxiety, to depressive symptoms.
When positive experiences accumulate and children learn coping skills that help them to manage stress, the fulcrum can slide, so the scale tilts toward positive outcomes more easily. That's what resilience is all about.
There's always an adult, or more than one adult, who is key to providing that relationship that helps to build resilience.
All right. So questions, comments, thoughts about what you just saw? Can people unmute themselves too? Do they have that capacity to?
Yep, they do.
They
So
do. They do.
yeah.
Feel free to unmute yourself.
Well, it starts early. It's not just something that is formed at the start of COVID. It's started early.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I have to emphasize that it obviously starts very, very early. And we know the research is showing us, I mean, it starts from even before they come out of the womb, really. But definitely that first year of life is really critical. What else are your thoughts on this? When he started talking about, and this is where a lot of people ask me questions, the fulcrum, and you saw the fulcrum move backwards and forward.
I think as leaders, we always want to try to work within the positive with anyone that we work with to help increase their positive experiences, to lead them to have their fulcrum slide to the positive side.
Yeah, I think that that's a good thing to think about. If you're leaders, if you're managing people, how are you creating an environment that lends to those things that were in that video. They talked about safety. They talked about support. They talked about those things. And if you saw them, you saw things that were moving it one way. Violence was moving it toward less positive outcomes. Safety was moving it toward more positive outcomes. So there are certain things that move it one way. There are certain things that move it another. And I think you're right. As managers, I think that that's something that you need to definitely pay attention to in terms of creating a space that lends to resilience for people. Any other thoughts on what you saw?
Hey, this is Chiquita. I agree with everything I saw in the video. It really made me reflect on my own like mental health journey. I kind of left a comment in there that people are more aware. I think when COVID happened, everything slowed down. Which allowed you to think, right? It allowed you to reflect. You got to spend a little bit more time with yourself, your family, or whatever. And when it translates over to like my management style, like I try to consider the why, right? Like, why is someone not doing what I asked them to do? Why is, the behavior part? And it just reemphasized what I already think about, but like generally it could have nothing to do with what's happening in this moment. Like maybe it's experiences prior to this. Not to say that it's an excuse, but sometimes when you understand what motivates people and their why, you can usually influence the behavior a little better. Because it's not your communication style. It's not how you want to receive information. It's what you need to do to influence them or support them or make them feel safe. So it definitely reiterated some things that I try to think about, but I maybe have fallen short on lately as things start to ramp back up. Right.
And I don't want you to just think about this for the people that work for you or in management, even though I know that, part of this presentation series is part of that. I really want you to think about embracing it for yourself. Like, how is it safe in your life? Where are the safe spaces in your life? Where are the things that move that fulcrum toward positive things in your life? Because I think sometimes when we get in leadership, we forget. I mean, I know we have the weight and responsibility of others on our shoulders, but we forget if we don't take care of ourselves first, that everybody else is going to fall off. That we have to keep the balance for them. So I think embracing that for yourselves too, I think is particularly important. Any other thoughts or comments on the video?
We have in the chat from Chris, it shows impact on glass half full versus glass half empty attitude.
And my response to glass half empty and half full is, doesn't matter whether it's half full or half empty. The point is it's refillable. Resilience says the glass is refillable. Somebody else said something in the chat. I see the numbers, but I can't see what you're saying right now.
Okay. Chiquita said that she likes that.
Oh, okay.
And
Glasses. Huh? Did somebody else say something?
there was an earlier chat from DeAndre agreeing with Jessica. I need to implement some changes before I break. So that's Jessica and DeAndre.
Yeah, important to make those changes, to recognize them. So what are the characteristics of resiliency? And even in being a good leader, I think these are some of the things that we find that are characteristics of a person that's resilient. And in no way am I saying that when I say resilient, that you're not hurt by things that are going on, that you're not upset by things that are going on, that you're some sort of superhero with a cape. That is not what resiliency is. Okay. Resiliency is taking the hits and the bruises and trying to figure out healthy ways of getting up and moving on. And I notice I'm using that word healthy a lot because that is my word, healthy. Are we doing it in a healthy way? So one, being a good communicator. I'm glad that Chiquita said that about, hey, my communication style. Am I communicating well with the people that are around me? You know, am I meeting their needs for communication? Some people are better listeners. Some people are better if I put it in writing. Some people are better, you know, if I only send them a text message as opposed to calling them, you know, being a good communicator. Having an internal locus of control. And if you're not familiar with that term, an internal locus of control means that you feel like you, the person, feels like they internally have the power to control what goes on in their environment, as opposed to somebody with an external locus of control who feels like the environment controls me. So you want an internal locus of control to feel like I can't control everything going on around me, but I do have control over some things. Having high emotional intelligence and managing emotions effectively. This is one of the ones where I see there's a lot of shortfalls in society today, that people do not read emotional cues well. They don't have high emotional intelligence, nor do they manage their emotions well, which is, you know, you can see it on the news that they're not managing their emotion well, and the TikTok videos and all this stuff of people and pretty wild behavior. So you're actually seeing that lower level of emotional intelligence, and which is kind of troubling to me in some ways. Hold positive views of themselves and their abilities. Having a good self-esteem, knowing that you can do well even if you mess up, that you do well. Having the capacity to make realistic plans and stick to them. That's important. I know some people, they come in with all of these plans in a very short period of time, and I'm going, how did you think that that was going to work? You know, that they try to cram too many things into too small of a space, and then when they fail, again, the stress level goes up, it's high. There's a lot of things that go on the line, a lot of things start cascading, but that's because there wasn't realistic plans made from the beginning. Viewing themselves as a fighter rather than a victim of circumstance. So when you see people who say, you know, I'm a fighter, when you see people with breast cancer say, you know, I'm going to beat breast cancer, or, you know, this is not going to defeat me. Or, you know what, I'm going to live to fight another day. So today may not be the best day, you know, well, heck, this week or this month may not have been the best week, but I can figure this out. I know I can figure this out. It may take me some time, but I'm going to figure this out. I see some things in the chat.
One of the questions is, will they be able to receive a copy of the slide deck?
Sure. I'd be
Okay.
glad to send it to you.
There you go. Thank you. I don't see any other comments in the chat.
Oh, maybe you told me about them before and I see the number 3. Okay. So this is one more video that I want you to watch. Now, he talks about, and I said this before, so I want to reiterate that and why this is particularly important, because these, again, resilience principles continue throughout the lifespan. And so he begins to talk, Dr. Unger, on adult resilience and what that is and what that looks like. And so I wanted to present the child part to you, again, kind of like the genesis, the beginning of what we know about resilience and genes. But then I'm like my mama, what about when we old and crusty? You know, well, I'm old and crusty now. I'm not 5 anymore. How can I affect the resilience and my ability to rebound in my life? So here we go.
If you're thinking about resilience as as something that's just inside of us, I'm going to suggest that that's only sort of half the story. Because a lot of what comes out, that positive attitude, that sense of optimism, is largely also spurred by the people around us. I remember that I met this young woman in my clinical practice a few years ago. She would come to see me on her lunch hour, and she was a paralegal, so she would basically walk from her office down to where I was working, and she always showed up, because it was a work day, she would always show up just dressed so incredibly well. And I say that because what was significant was the story she told me was kind of, well, very different. What she told me was that she was in a relationship that was quite emotionally abusive, and she hadn't been able to figure out a way to get rid of this guy. Now, it was interesting for me. I was trying to understand, I mean, how do I motivate her? How do I create this resilience inside of her to sort of take action? And after getting to know her a little bit, and the incongruity of how she looked coming from her work site and what she told me about her life at home, I just suggested to her a small little experiment. All I asked her to do was, I just wanted to see what would happen if she went home and didn't change out of that sort of professional veneer and tried to cope with this guy, what would happen? And she found, when we met a week later, she said it was like a light bulb moment for her. She was triggering herself with her clothing that she was somebody worthy of a lot of respect. But she couldn't be that person and then let herself be, in a sense, emotionally manipulated and abused by this guy. So when you look at that pattern, it wasn't very long after that we were able to set up a safety plan. We got her friends involved in helping her to escape the apartment. We waited till her lease was sort of up, which happened to coincidentally be within sort of 6 weeks later. So she was able to sort of evacuate this life with a safety plan. She had contacted the police if there was any danger of violence. She had me as her support network as well. There was a whole bunch of things that we put in place. Now, my argument is that yes, on some level, she had to change her attitude. She had to change her desire to be someone different. She had to flip the switch, right? But a lot of that was as a result of it being facilitated by cues outside of her. Whether it was her colleagues at work who, when they looked at her, they said, "You are a professional up-and-comer. You are a woman with great potential." Whether it was simply me being in her corner or the fact that she had friends that were willing to sort of sneak into the house or at least protect her so that she could get her stuff out of there. So resilience, from my understanding, is becoming this kind of complicated dance between what we have inside of us and what we do to awaken that in people. When people present with sort of a complex trauma or complex needs, we're very quick to sort of fly in professional help and make things very complicated for people's healing. Most people, all they need is a job, a ride, a home, and a friend. If you have a job, a ride, a home, and a friend, your mental health, your state of well-being is likely to be actually quite good. So let me offer a definition of resilience that's very practical. Rather than just thinking about resilience as our capacity to bounce back, I'm going to suggest that capacity, that shift in attitude, that positive orientation towards life is actually something that is facilitated. So for me, resilience occurs in a context of adversity. When there's stress on our lives, I'm going to suggest that resilience is our capacity, individually or in groups, to navigate our way to the psychological, the social, the cultural, and the physical resources that we need for well-being. Now, it's also, however, our capacity, individually and again in groups, to negotiate for those resources to be offered to us in contextually and culturally meaningful ways. Now, that's a lot of words for a definition. But if I could just boil this down to a couple of key concepts. One is this idea of navigation. So navigation is partly your own personal agency to get up in the morning and go searching for what you need to do well, pushing yourself to go to the gym, pushing yourself to have positive relationships, pushing yourself to look for new opportunities. But there's no point navigating if there ain't nothing there. What's the point of navigating if there's no islands to bump up against? So navigation is this dual kind of energy, right? It's me pushing out into the world, but the world reciprocating with opportunities. Now, if it was that easy, then all you'd have to do is put in front of people opportunities to do well. So let's think about this. Have you ever offered somebody, maybe one of the workers that you're working with, one of your clients, and offered them something and they just don't accept it? People don't always take advantage of opportunities. And that's because of this principle of negotiation. What we're given has to, in a sense, match what we need. People will come and say, I need something. The young woman who I began with, she basically came in saying, look, I love this guy. I want to stay. I want the stability. I don't want to be single. I know it's an awful kind of relationship, but it's, it's better than being back on the, dating scene. I mean, it was like she was saying to me, just follow me, Mike. This is good, isn't it? And I was kind of going, well, I don't really want to judge, but it doesn't sound like it's meeting all of your needs. And it doesn't sound like it's matching who you are and your identity. There's all kinds of other aspects of your life this is not meeting. And so I didn't oppose her. I just said, let's just play with it. Let's just see what happened. And I just introduced her to some new ideas. I said, would you follow me and not change your clothes when you go home? I was negotiating with her about a different set of conclusions about her life. But I was trying to match it to her. And it only worked because eventually I figured out a way to match the intervention to what she needed. And I'm going to suggest this, that if things are going really rough in your lives, in your particular context, never forget that this causes us stress, and what we're actually needing for our resilience is always this dynamic of asking from our environment, please negotiate with me a little bit so that I can get what I need in ways that make sense to me.
Okay. So after listening to that one was a little bit deeper. Questions, thoughts, comments, feel free to unmute yourself. You guys still there?
We're still here, and
Okay.
I would say I like the net negotiation concept of must match what is needed. So I have a family member like that.
They won't take the opportunity provided to them.
Exactly. And it was interesting. I just provided some information this morning, and I provided the information last night, and I said, okay, I'll send it to you later. And he actually reached out and said, send me the contact info. So he needed it. So he had a sense of urgency now.
Right. So it depends on what they need. But I found it really interesting. He said, you need a job. Oh, go ahead. Somebody said something. I found it interesting. He said, you need a job, you need a ride, you need a home, you need a friend. A job, a ride, a home, a friend. So I want you to think about the things that are happening now. The things that are happening now in society. What's being threatened? The socialization and friend piece was definitely threatened during COVID, right? The social isolation, the loneliness. Jobs are being threatened now. Jobs are being lost. You're talking about a recession, right? Homelessness is going up right now, right? And so you need a job, a ride, a home, and a friend. And maybe even cars are being threatened right now because the cost of a car is outrageous, right? So those are things that are concerning because of the threat to resilience, to adult resilience. I thought that was interesting to hear him. But also, like you said, that negotiation piece. Are we really providing what that person is needing? What do they need? What do they need? And psychologically, I think he figured out that she needed to know her own worth. And it was a negotiation, like he said, between what's internal and external. So rather than just shove this in front of her, shove pamphlets about leaving your partner, domestic violence, all that in front of her and saying, listen, you need to leave this guy. He met her need. So Chiquita, you have a question.
More of a comment. And of course, I agree with what you said. I think it's interesting how we are different people at work versus like at home, right? Like, I think, and I was thinking about this when one of the other examples or something else we were talking about is like, we can give grace to our coworkers way more than we can give grace at home, for instance. Like, we tend to be more patient with people at work than we are at home. And it's just how powerful like perspective and like just what she had on like gave her enough power or gave her the confidence to take her power back, basically. I mean, she needed to support things, but to me, like when she's dressed like a boss or dressed like a professional, she could take that same mindset home with her versus at home, she felt smaller, right? So the clothes made her feel bigger and made her take up more space. So I thought that was really good, but that's it, just a comment.
And internally, she took that internal locus of control back at home. Where at work, she had it. When she got home, she let the environment control her and felt like it was controlling her rather than her saying, well, wait a minute, I can dictate this for myself. I don't have to take this from him. And so she learned to meet her own need. He didn't have to do anything. And then she was able to enlist support. And I think the support system that around was really important as well. Any other thoughts, questions, comments? So the last thing that I want to do, if there are no other thoughts or comments, is to talk about how you personally yourself can become more resilient. And deal with the stressors that we face, whether at work, at home, ways that we can make ourselves more robust in the resiliency department. And the first thing that I tell people we got to do is we've got to control the stress levels. We've got to be able to emotionally regulate, because the stuff around us, we cannot control. That's out of our control. You know, whether the person next to you is driving all like a maniac, or the person in the grocery store is going off, or your children are, acting up, or, there's problems with a coworker. Those types of things aren't necessarily in our control. So we've got to deal with, again, that internal locus of control. What can I control? What can I take care of? And how can I affect my external environment in positive ways? So one, immediate strategies. I am a strong believer in breathing, working with your central nervous system to help control the stress levels in your body. And it's nothing more than simple, deep breathing. All this stuff is pretty much that I'm talking about is pretty much free, easy to access on YouTube or anything. You can Google it, breathing videos, deep breathing videos, shaking it out, actually physically moving your body to shake out stress and tension. I don't even know if they do that in school anymore, but I remember when we were kids, they used to say, get the wiggles out, just to get up and have you move around. Aromatherapy. I have let's see if I can, Himalayan salt lamp. I don't know if you guys can see it, that I put oil in my office that has smells to it. Aromatherapy does a lot in that moment to release and trigger chemicals in our brain, in our mind, to help us control stress. Also, mindfulness. Mindfulness is being in this moment right now without concentrating on what's to come or what's been in the past. but actually being very paying attention to everything around you at that moment. It's similar to meditation, but a little bit, you can enact it really quickly. So those are immediate strategies for right now. I'm sitting at my desk. Oops. I'm sitting at my desk. Those are the things that I can do at this moment to change my stress level. Then there are your short-term strategies. So there are things that you can do, again, guided imagery, and you can do, of course, meditation, progressive relaxation. These are things that you could do probably on lunch break, creating some artwork, you know, listening to some music. Again, these are short-term strategies. So this is, you know, by the end of the day, I need to take this down a little bit. You know, let me take my lunch break and do a little bit of guided imagery to take some of the stress from the day off. Long-term strategies, things that we can do to make ourselves more robust is one, we got to eat healthy. I know we hear that all the time, but you know, our grandparents were right, you are what you eat. So we have got to eat healthier and balance the diet. Less sugar, you know, less caffeine, less processed foods, more healthy things. Again, practicing gratitude. What things can I be thankful for? Remember that thing about feeling like the victim as opposed to being a fighter. So this is similar. Practicing, okay, this is not going so well right now, but there are 5 other things that are going well. And I'm thankful for those things. Having that, practicing that as an attitude is important, because I think we have a tendency to really hone in on what's negative and what's negatively impacting us at the moment, as opposed to really paying attention to things that, you know, are going well. Like what's going well? This is what I tell people. I know those things are going bad, but actually what is going well? Something's going well. So concentrating on what's going well. Of course, yoga, exercise, Pilates, walking. I tell anybody, hey, do what you can. They've got chair exercises now. We know that there is a physiological change that affects us mentally when we exercise. So just trying to exercise, stretching, something are things that cumulatively make a difference to our overall resilience. Positive self-talk. I can do this. I know I can get this done. Oh yeah, okay, I made a mistake, but that's cool. I'm human, I can do this. As opposed to, that was the dumbest thing you ever did. Why did you say that? Why did you do that? Change that to positive self-talk. Maybe you shouldn't have said that, but I'll get it right next time. Again, that's a change in attitude, mindset, thinking for the long time. Last thing is one that I really emphasize to a lot of people is making time to play. As adults, we rarely play, but we need to make time to play and recreate. So we need to do things that are fun. And everybody knows adulting isn't fun, right? So, but we need to build that fun time in and build those supportive relationships and loving relationships. So I was just telling my husband this morning, they have a football reunion back in Maryland and from his high school. And he's like, I don't know if I'm going. And I'm like, you really need to go. You need to go and play. You need to have some fun. You need to have a good time. You know, you need to go and play. You need to do some things, skip the work, skip the lawn, skip dust in the house, skip going on the computer and sending somebody that email right now. The world will wait. Go and play. Play and relieve your mind. Are there any questions about any of this? Questions, thoughts? No?
These are just great reminders.
Okay. For some people, I mean, this is what they do anyway, but some of us aren't doing this.
Yeah,
Matter of fact, a lot
that
of
is
us aren't
true.
doing this. Aren't doing this, you know? Tell myself, tell myself to do this. And I have to tell myself, you need to go back to healthy eating. You know, what there was a garbage week. You got to go back to, because we got to preserve this, So these are things that I have to do. I'm particularly bad in the short term strategies where I need to go back and, okay, wait a minute. You need to slow your day and you need to do a little meditation right now to help to mediate the stress of the day. Because I don't like to stop, but you have to learn to stop. These are things that you have to do constantly to take care of yourself. And so those are the things I need to get better at. All right, last thing, positivity starts here. Let's start the day. Let's think about trying to be more resilient. I thank you so much for your time and your attention and being willing to share with me during this hour. My information is here on the slide, and my email and the website address and the phone number where you can reach me. So I certainly thank you. If any of you have any questions, let me know. And I'll be able to respond to you as soon as I can if you email me. I have already sent the slide deck for you guys to have. So Tish, I think I'll be turning it back over to you.
Thank you, Ms. Farabee. It's been a wonderful hour with you, and thank you for the wealth of information. And Kyle, please chime in with any parting words that you have.
No, I thank you everyone for attending today. Be on the lookout. We are going to start planning our fall annual meeting sometime hopefully in October or November. And so we'll communicate about that soon. We did record the meeting today, and so we can hopefully get that on our LinkedIn and social media pages for folks that want to watch it again later. But thank you all for coming.
Okay.
Thanks again.
And we'll be sending out the PowerPoint slide. Okay, great. Thank you.